Hello, VOO investors. Here are 10 things you probably didn't know about your largest holding. Number 1, it's not the 500 largest companies in the US. This is the number one way you can tell someone doesn't really know what they're talking about when they refer to the S&P 500. It's actually 500 companies that are meant to represent the US economy. For example, Dell is not in the S&P 500, but it's the 85th largest publicly traded company in the US as I'm filming this. Number 2, it is 500 companies, not 504. Okay, maybe you already knew it was exactly 500 companies, but have you ever wondered why when you look it up on Vanguard's website, it says 504? That's because some companies like Google have dual share classes, so they're counted twice. Number 3, VOO is not passive. Sure, it passively tracks the S&P 500, but the stocks in the S&P 500 are chosen by a committee of real people. Then index funds like VOO are managed by people who have to decide the best way to track the index and implement all the daily trading decisions. And how does your money get into an ETF like VOO in the first place? You make an active decision to put it there. When you really think about it, every investment decision you make is an active one, even a decision to go passive. Number 4, VOO is not the cheapest S&P 500 index fund. At 3 basis points, it's pretty cheap, but you can get the Spider Portfolio S&P 500 ETF, SPLG, for 2 basis points, and you can get the BNY Mellon US Large Cap Core Equity ETF, BKLC, which is almost the same thing as the S&P 500, for free. Number 5, VOO is not a complete portfolio. It doesn't have any international, it doesn't have any bonds, and it has less than 1% in small caps. Each of these can be important depending on your investment objectives, which I explained in greater detail in my asset allocation video. I'll try to put it up here on the screen. Number 6, the S&P 500 is the most concentrated that it's been in over 50 years. Yes, you get exposure to 500 companies, but about 1/3 of your money is in just 10 of them. To take it one step further, last time the market cap, the blue line, diverged this far from earnings, the black line, was the tech bubble. While this is different in the sense that the biggest companies are all really profitable, it's similar in that they're now in a position where they have to deliver on their faster growth expectations versus the rest of the S&P 500 in order to justify their valuations. If the near-term earnings boost from AI doesn't live up to the hype, we could still have another adjustment period where the valuations of the high-flying tech stocks come down to earth, even if it's not as severe as the one in the early 2000s. That brings us to number 7. The S&P 500 has had 3 long-term flat markets. Another reason to think twice before putting all your eggs in one VOO basket. From the peak in 1929, it took almost 30 years to recover. Okay, so now with the creation of the Fed, we're pretty unlikely to have another Great Depression like that. But from 1968, it took almost 25 years to recover to its prior high. And after the tech bubble burst, it took about 15 years. This can absolutely happen again. Number 8, Warren Buffett never said everyone should only buy VOO. Here's what Warren Buffett really said about why he recommends S&P 500 index funds.
Because I don't think most people are in a position to pick single stocks. A few maybe, but on balance, I think people are much better off buying a cross-section of America and just forgetting about it.
Okay, so what he actually said is that most individual investors should not buy individual stocks and would be better off in an S&P 500 index fund. On that, I very much agree. What he did not say is that no one should ever diversify internationally, buy small caps or emerging markets if they're looking for higher upside potential, or buy bonds if they're looking for downside protection. Number 9, most headlines saying things like 90% of all active managers underperform their passive benchmarks are quoting the SPIVA scorecard, which has 3 major biases. First, they don't always use funds' actual benchmarks. How can you say a fund isn't beating its benchmark when you're not comparing it to its benchmark? Second, they often don't use a fund's lowest cost share class. And third, they only look at US stock funds, where the success rate of active managers is usually the lowest. So why do they bias their results in favor of passive index funds? Well, this study is produced by S&P Dow Jones, which makes their money by licensing out their indexes to passive managers like Vanguard. The more people who buy index funds like VOO, the more money they make. Trusting a study on the active passive debate from S&P Dow Jones is a lot like trusting a study about the health benefits of milk that came from the dairy industry. You should question the findings. And lastly, number 10, VOO is 100% invested in US companies, but about 40% of their revenue comes from outside the US. That means you can't really escape investing outside the US by only buying VOO. But at the same time, you can't buy the best companies in the world by only buying VOO. Some of the leading companies in areas like semiconductors, TSMC, and ASML, luxury goods, LVMH and Kering, aerospace, Airbus and Safran, and many other industries from batteries to clean energy to mining are based outside the US. That's one of the reasons why I prefer a global approach to investing. If you're curious about some international complements to VOO, I have a video. I'll put it somewhere here on the screen. If this is your first time here, thanks for watching, and I do have a free Discord with over 100 members. Check out that link below in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.